The scariest part of awakening is that you can no longer be the old you. You can no longer unsee what you have seen. And many times what happens is things have to change. People in your relationships have to change. Your career and your work life has to change. The things that you find passion in have to change. Why?
There's a phenomenon that almost nobody talks about. It happens to people at different stages of their lives. One day, the beliefs that made perfect sense no longer do. The answers that satisfied you for years suddenly feel incomplete. The identity you built starts to feel like a prison. You assume you're broken. You assume you're lost. But what if I told you this experience has a specific structure? What if it follows 5 distinct stages that countless people have already walked? And what if understanding those stages is the difference between getting stuck in confusion and actually moving toward transformation? Today, we're breaking down the 5 stages of spiritual deconstruction. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand what's happening inside you, you'll know exactly where you are in the journey and what comes next. Most people assume transformation begins with a breakthrough. In reality, it usually begins with discomfort. A question that won't leave you alone. A contradiction you can't unsee. A growing awareness that something about your current understanding no longer feels true. This can be incredibly confusing. Because on the surface, your life may look exactly the same. You go to work. You talk to friends. You follow your routines. But internally, something is changing. The framework you've used to make sense of reality is beginning to loosen. And that creates tension. Part of you wants to explore. Another part wants to retreat into certainty. This internal conflict can feel exhausting. Yet it's also necessary. Because growth rarely begins when everything feels comfortable. Growth begins when the structures that once supported you become too small for who you're becoming. The problem is that most people interpret this stage incorrectly. They assume questioning means failure. They assume doubt means weakness. But doubt is often the birthplace of deeper understanding. The questions arising within you are not enemies. They are invitations. Invitations to look beyond inherited beliefs. Invitations to seek truth for yourself. And once those invitations are accepted, the next stage becomes unavoidable. There is a reason spiritual deconstruction feels so intense. It isn't because you're losing information. It's because you're losing certainty. And certainty can feel like a form of security. When it begins to disappear, everything feels unstable. Ideas you once defended with confidence now seem incomplete. Communities that once felt like home begin to feel restrictive. The identity you've spent years building starts falling apart. This stage often feels like standing in the ruins of your former self. Nothing makes sense. Nothing feels familiar. And for many people, this is the most frightening part of the journey. Because the mind desperately wants answers. It wants a new belief system, a new identity, a new certainty, anything to replace what has been lost. But transformation has its own timing. And before something new can emerge, the old must fully collapse. That collapse may feel like failure. But it isn't. It's clearing space. Space for something more authentic to emerge. Yet before that authenticity arrives, there is a stage almost everyone struggles to endure. The stage known as the void. The void is where many people believe they've lost their way. It's the space between identities. The place where the old self no longer fits and the new self has not yet appeared. And because nothing feels solid, this stage can be deeply uncomfortable. You may feel disconnected, directionless, alone. You may find yourself searching endlessly for answers, only to discover that none of them fully satisfy you. What makes the void so difficult is that it demands something most of us have never learned to do. It asks us to stop forcing certainty, to stop rushing toward conclusions, to stop trying to control every step of the process. The void teaches surrender, and surrender is not weakness. It's trust. Trust that growth is occurring even when you cannot see it. Trust that something is unfolding beneath the surface. Trust that this season of uncertainty has a purpose. Think of a seed buried beneath the soil. From the outside, it appears as though nothing is happening. Yet beneath the darkness, an entire transformation is underway. Roots are forming. Life is preparing itself. And in the same way, what feels like emptiness may actually be preparation. The void is not where your journey ends. It's where your rebirth begins. The challenge is that most people don't realize this while they're in the void. They assume the silence means they've failed. They assume the confusion means they've taken a wrong turn. They assume the absence of certainty means something is broken inside them. But what if the opposite is true? What if the discomfort you're feeling is evidence that your old identity no longer has control over you? What if the reason everything feels uncertain is because you're no longer willing to settle for borrowed truths? Because that is often what spiritual deconstruction reveals. Not that you've lost your path, but that you've outgrown it. And when that realization begins to settle in, something remarkable happens. Slowly, almost without noticing it, you begin hearing your own voice again. Not the voice of expectation. Not the voice of tradition. Not the voice of fear. Your voice. And that's where the fourth stage begins. Contrary to what many people think, Reconstruction is not about replacing one rigid belief system with another. It isn't about finding a new box to live inside. It's about learning how to think, feel, and experience life from a place of authenticity. For the first time, you begin building your understanding of reality consciously. Not because someone told you what to believe, but because you've explored it for yourself. This stage often feels liberating. The same questions that once terrified you now excite you. The uncertainty that once felt threatening now feels expansive. You stop seeing life as a puzzle that needs to be solved and begin seeing it as a mystery to be experienced. And that changes everything. Because when you're no longer obsessed with being right, you become open to growth. You become curious. You become flexible. You become willing to evolve. Many people discover something unexpected during this phase. The truth they were searching for was never hidden somewhere outside of them. It was buried beneath layers of conditioning, beneath years of expectations, beneath fears they inherited from people who were also searching for answers. And eventually, that wholeness gives birth to the final stage. The stage you've been moving toward all along. Most people imagine rebirth as a dramatic transformation, a sudden awakening, a moment where everything instantly makes sense. But genuine rebirth is often much quieter than that. It arrives gradually, like dawn replacing darkness. You begin noticing that the things which once controlled you no longer have the same power. The fears that once dictated your decisions begin to loosen their grip. The need for external validation starts to fade. The pressure to fit into expectations becomes less important. You no longer feel compelled to perform a version of yourself for the world. Because you're finally becoming comfortable with who you truly are. And that comfort creates a profound sense of peace. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect. It doesn't. Challenges still arise. Pain still exists. Uncertainty still visits from time to time. But your relationship with those experiences changes. You stop seeing difficulties as signs that something is wrong. You begin seeing them as part of the human experience. You stop demanding certainty from life. You begin trusting yourself to navigate whatever life brings. This is what many people misunderstand about spiritual growth. It's not about escaping suffering. It's about developing a deeper capacity to move through it. It's not about becoming superior. It's about becoming authentic. It's not about transcending your humanity. It's about embracing it. And when that happens, life begins to feel different. You become more present, more grateful, more aware. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Which stage are you currently experiencing? The cracks, the collapse, the void, the reconstruction, or the rebirth? Your story may help someone else realize they're not alone on this journey. And if you're committed to understanding yourself on a deeper level, subscribe and join us for more conversations about consciousness, emotional mastery, and personal transformation. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of your life begin when the old story finally ends.